Jesus got into the boat and his disciples followed him. Suddenly a furious storm came upon the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us, we're going to drown." He replied, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the wind and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." I feel like I've spent a huge portion of my life like walking through a storm. You know what I mean? Like, I really relate to this story where the disciples are following Jesus, and as soon as they get in the boat and they start sailing with Jesus, like the waves and the wind and the chaos just erupt out of nowhere, and it scares them to death. I can relate to that. I'll just tell you about the last 3 years. The last 3 years of my life, my journey that me and my wife have been on, it started with my wife giving birth to our daughter, which was amazing. Like, you would think that's a great start. Well, just days after she gave birth to our daughter, my wife almost died. She found herself in the ICU for 3 days, and no one could figure out what was wrong with her. And then she gets Bell's palsy, and so half of her face doesn't work. And then on top of all of that, she starts struggling with anxiety from the stress and the trauma of this whole situation. And then as things are starting to look up, we're on vacation and we find out that our house has caught on fire. And moment to moment, we find out eventually that we've lost everything. Like, we lost everything that we owned. And so now we're trying to figure out what to do. And we move into my parents' house. And while we're living with my parents, we find out that we're pregnant, which is incredible. Like, finding out we're pregnant in that time, it is this beacon of hope. It's this light in this darkness in our lives at that moment. And so we're looking forward to this baby and all that it represents to us. And then just months later, we lose our son. Like, we lost our baby boy. My wife had to deliver him early. And I just remember thinking, like, when is our time going to end? Like, when is our storm over? When are we going to stop being in this situation where the wind and the waves are just all around us? Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt like, my life feels crazy? Like, it just feels like it's storm after storm after storm, just chaos. I mean, think about it. We all go through these challenging times in life. I mean, sometimes we lose our jobs, or maybe we go through a divorce, or we break up with our boyfriend or girlfriend, or maybe we lose our house. Maybe we end up in the hospital. Maybe we lose somebody we love. I mean, we walk through seasons of life. There are all kinds of seasons. You can insert your own. And so we go through these crazy times where life gets real, and it gets real fast, and we find ourselves feeling tossed around by the wind and the waves. Well, if you've ever felt like that, I have, and we're not alone. The Bible is full of stories with people's lives who have been disrupted. But there's something that's important about God and about His faithfulness, and something that we need to think about today. Even in the wind and the waves, even in the chaos, I want to share something with you. A disrupted life points towards peace. Think about Mary, Jesus' own mother. I mean, she's a teenage girl, and she finds out that before she gets married, she's going to have a baby, okay? The story's complicated. This teenage girl, before she's married, is literally going to give birth to God. Her disrupted life, though, points towards peace. I mean, literally, her life points towards the Prince of Peace. There's a guy in the Bible named Daniel, and Daniel was this guy who loved to pray. And what happened was all these leaders tried to get Daniel convicted of a crime, but they just couldn't figure it out because he wouldn't do anything wrong. And so they came up with this rule that you can't pray to anybody else or anything else except for the king. And so Daniel refused to do it. He went back to his house and he started praying to God. and he was arrested. And because of his obedience to God and his faithfulness to God, he was thrown into a lion's den with a bunch of hungry lions. Here's the crazy thing. The lions didn't touch him. I mean, God prevailed in that story. Daniel's disrupted life led to peace. Like, he didn't let the chaos overrun him. He just kept depending on God. There's another story in the Old Testament, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 guys who also won't bow down to the king of their time, and they get thrown into a furnace for it. But the crazy part is they aren't even touched by the fire. Like, they walk through the fire with God by their side. They make it out. Their disrupted life is pointing towards this greater source of peace. There's all kinds of stories like this in the Bible. I mean, so how do we apply that to our lives? How do we take our situation and say, my life is disrupted, but I need it to point towards peace. I need it to point towards something greater. Well, we have to take the words of Jesus then, and we have to think, like Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. Like, in this world you will have storms and you will have hard things happen to you. But then he says, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. Like, he says, you will be disrupted, but take heart, I'm going to point you towards peace. And so today I want to think about that. Like, I want to think about, what if we were to handle our chaos today, or maybe the storm that we don't even know is coming? Like, what if when we are encountered by the wind and the waves of life, what if we were to say, I don't know where this is going, but God, I want you to point it towards peace. God, I want you to take the disruption in my life and point it towards peace. Now, what would that do? Like, what would that do in your life? What would that do in your spouse's life, or in your children's life, or your coworker's life? I mean, like, what would that do? How would that impact the way that you live? It would probably radically change all of us. And so today I just want you to pray this. God, if I'm in a storm, or if there's a storm coming, I want you to take the disruption in my life, and I want you to teach me how to point it back towards your peace. Show me, God, how to rely on you enough that I would be willing to walk through the storm and the chaos and find myself at a place of peace. Well, that's my prayer for you today. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.